In anime, there are some legendary fights. Fights we can't help but think about constantly. Fights that pop up in edits 24/7. Fights that we'll go back to specific episodes or specific chapters just to reread or rewatch over and over and over again. But for every legendary fight we get in anime, there's 3 we wish we could have got. And Naruto is no exception to that rule. People want to see Minato versus Fugaku, or Rock Lee versus Sasuke Part 2, or maybe more importantly than either of those, Jiraiya versus Itachi. See, the concept of Jiraiya and Itachi battling has been around for almost as long as Naruto. Because in the very, very early days of Naruto, when Itachi and Kisame pulled up on Konoha and we got to see members of the Akatsuki for the first ever time, both Kisame and Itachi stopped when they saw that the person that they were there to kidnap, Naruto, was with one of the legendary Sannin, Jiraiya. See, both Itachi and Jiraiya are ninjas of legend, being considered the strongest of their times in separate eras, with Jiraiya accomplishing the most missions in Konoha's history and Itachi being one of Konoha's most important assets. And yet, there's many people who believe that the outcome of this battle is relatively clear. I mean, we've been told by one of the fighters in this hypothetical fight how this fight would end. Itachi himself stated that if him and Jiraiya ended up battling, they would either kill each other or injure each other very badly. Even Kisame, the tailless-tailed beast, the man who without Samehada required Might Guy to open to the 7th gate to kill him, stated he was no match for Jiraiya. But was this, quote, Itachi simply trying to avoid conflict and make sure that Naruto remained protected by Konoha? Or was it an actual confession of how he believed the battle would go? Well, today, those are some of the questions we hope to answer, because today, we're talking Jiraiya versus Itachi, the boy prodigy versus the gallant ninja. But before we get to talking about any hypothetical battles, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're feeling particularly generous, guys, please, for me, follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk about all other anime. And if you like the idea of me talking about other anime, you're gonna love my anime podcast that I do with Danny Mata called Otaku's Anonymous, where me and him break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So before we dive into this battle between 2 legendary ninjas, let's introduce our fighters a little bit. In one corner, we have Jiraiya the Gallant, the man who fought against Konan and Nagato's 6 Paths of Pain simultaneously and almost killed them. The man who Nagato himself stated if Jiraiya knew his secret would have defeated all 6 Paths of Pain simultaneously. The man that Kisame, one of the strongest people in the entirety of Naruto's universe, said he was no match for. The man who lived through and was the war hero of 2 separate shinobi world war. The man who gained the moniker of one of the legendary Sannin by Hanzo the Salamander in the conclusion of the Second Great Shinobi World War. The sensei to 3 of the strongest ninjas in Naruto's history: Naruto, Minato, and Nagato. Each of them the strongest ninja of their era in their respective era. The man who mastered the Rasengan, a jutsu that it took Minato 2 years to make in a matter of weeks. The first man we ever saw use a Sage Mode, a man feared in every corner of the ninja world. In the other corner, we have Itachi Uchiha, a child genius, an Anbu captain at 11 years old, the holder of the 2nd highest score in the Shinobi Academy exam, and the holder of the fastest time through the Forest of Death until Gaara broke it in Naruto. Not to mention a man who took the Chunin exams by himself. A child who awoke MS by cutting down his own best friend who had been poisoned by the Shadow Hokage they were working with to keep an eye on their own clan. The child who was able to cut down the strongest clan in Konoha by himself. Well, not by himself. Obito was there, but Obito was only killing non-combatants. A man who has defeated what is believed to be Orochimaru's strongest 4, who used Izanami to put Kabuto in a permanent genjutsu that forced Kabuto to release Edo Tensei. A man who was basically solely responsible for the sealing of Nagato in his Edo Tensei 4. Itachi is one of the most beloved characters in not only Naruto history, but anime history. And as somebody who now wears his face on his thigh, might have a little bias here. But what are the kits or the moves or the jutsus of these 2 combatants, and how do they measure up to each other? Well, the first person we'll be talking about today is Jiraiya. Jiraiya is hailed as one of the greatest ninjas that Konoha ever created, with being dubbed a legendary Sannin, which just means 3 ninja, by Hanzo the Salamander, gave him a title that made titles like being one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist or a member of the Uchiha clan pale in comparison. comparison. Like we've already stated, Kisame and Itachi together believed that the best outcome they could get against Jiraiya would be a stalemate. This man was asked to be Hokage 3 separate times, and if he had lived just a little bit longer, he would have been offered a 4. Kakashi, one of the strongest ninjas in the history of Naruto, not just Konoha, believed the idea of Jiraiya being beaten in one-on-one combat absurd. And upon Jiraiya's death, he became one of the most desirable people for Kabuto to reincarnate. A passion which hasn't disappeared even into the era of Boruto, as Jiraiya was brought back to life through the medium of Kashin Koji, his clone created by Amado, as Amado believed a world without Jiraiya truly wasn't a world worth living in at all. Now, when it comes to chakra reserves and physical prowess in this battle, Jiraiya's got Itachi beat by a pretty significant margin. Jiraiya had enough chakra to consistently summon Gamabunta, the leader of the Toads of Mount Muabuka. Not to mention, he is one of only 6 people in all of Naruto's history to consistently pull off some version of Sage Mode. Hagoromo, Minato, Jiraiya, Naruto, Mitsuki, and Kabuto. Oh, and Hashirama. 7 people. Still pretty good company. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize about being able to pull off any version of Sage Mode is that the chakra required to do so is relatively immense, as one has to be able to mix their own chakra with however much nature chakra they pull in, creating Senjutsu chakra. In terms of physical strength, he was also one of the strongest people in Naruto's history, being able to incur serious damage to the multi-headed dogs that Nagato was able to summon using the animal path, as well as being shown lifting and throwing incredibly large boulders. Not to mention, when it comes to physical resilience, Jiraiya also has Itachi beat pretty badly, as we've seen Jiraiya tank an unprotected kick from Might Guy and attacks from some of the largest summoning animals in Naruto, those summoned by the animal path. In fact, the only time prior to Jiraiya's death that even brought to the brink of death was while fighting against Naruto's four-tail form and Tsunade, 2 people he didn't go all out against because he didn't want to hurt them. When it comes to ninjutsu, Jiraiya was able to use every elemental release except for lightning. That is to say, he could also use yin and yang. And because of this, he was hailed as a ninjutsu master, given the name the Toad Sage. Now, a lot of people believe that Jiraiya's entire kit is dependent on the toads, because he would often summon Gamabunta or Ma and Pa or a toad's esophagus to swallow people whole, or he would spit oil from his mouth or have a toad spit oil from its mouth and light it on fire. But his ninjutsu prowess went well beyond just that of toad jutsus. He was able to grow and manipulate his hair using his lion's mane technique as he wanted. And he can use his hair to do anything from shoot projectiles to grab people to defend himself in all directions. And the defense of his lion's mane technique was even more impressive because anybody who tried to attack him got injured. Not to mention the fact that he completely mastered the use of the Rasengan, something that very few people have been able to do, and also was able to use the Big Ball Rasengan, something that only Naruto was able to do. But outside of ninjutsu, Jiraiya was also a master of Fuinjutsu, being able to immediately deduce what Naruto's 8 trigram seal was and how to release it to make it as strong as possible for Naruto. And not to mention, we've also seen him seal off Amaterasu before. Yeah, that's right. His control over sealing techniques and barrier techniques was so elite that he was able to seal Amaterasu in a scroll, saying that he would study it later. And on top of that, Jiraiya's barrier technique was elite, as Jiraiya basically had N from Hunter x Hunter. See, Jiraiya has an ability called Barrier Canopy Method Formation that creates a bubble around Jiraiya. This barrier is able to be extended in all directions, a lot like the rotation of the Hyuga clan. However, unlike rotation, this bubble doesn't give Jiraiya physical defense, but it does sense anything that enters his bubble, like N, which essentially makes this bubble around him a sensing technique that allows him to immediately deduce if anything or anybody is coming at him. And as Jiraiya moves, this bubble moves with him, meaning that there's essentially no way to sneak up on Jiraiya, because the second you hit his bubble, he's able to react to exactly where you are. But if Jiraiya wants to take the barrier techniques one step further, he has his technique Barrier Toad Gourd Prison that summons a specific type of toad from Mount Muabuka that has an insanely huge dimension in their stomach. Jiraiya is able to then pull people into this toad's stomach that's filled with corrosive stomach acid. And once this enemy is trapped inside the toad's stomach, they can either be sent somewhere through reverse summoning or simply just digested by the stomach acid. And only Jiraiya, as the summoner of the toad, is able to enter or leave freely. But when it came to simply just straight up elemental releases like fire or earth, the scale at which Jiraiya could perform these techniques was on par with the highest level of ninja in Naruto, being able to spew fireballs as large as any Uchiha Uchiha, an Earth release as large as any Tsuchikage. And we haven't even mentioned Jiraiya's Sage mode yet. See, Jiraiya is an imperfect sage, the only imperfect Toad Sage we know of. And this isn't because he didn't have the body to undergo the Sage mode or enough chakra. It's simply because when it came to mixing nature chakra with his own, he wasn't as perfect as it as Minato or Naruto. However, fortunately, Jiraiya found a way around this shortcoming. Jiraiya would simply summon Ma and Pa, two of the elder sage toads from Mount Moonbuko, and have them, since they were standing still, mix nature chakra with their own chakra and pump that Senjutsu chakra into Jiraiya, which actually gives Jiraiya one of the strongest, if not the strongest version of Toad Sage mode we've ever seen. See, Jiraiya with this mode is able to accomplish something that neither Minato nor Naruto was able to figure out, and that is how to create Senjutsu chakra while moving. See, the only other person who's ever been able to battle while mixing their own Senjutsu chakra is Hashirama. This is because Hashirama was able to stand still on top of his wooden constructs and therefore be constantly mixing chakra and have the wood do all the moving. However, since Jiraiya is kind of a close quarters combat brawler, he needed to be able to move while making Senjutsu chakra, and that's exactly the luxury that Ma and Pa afforded him. On top of this, Ma and Pa are able to combine their attacks with Jiraiya to make incredibly powerful ninjutsu combination attacks, like Sage Art Goemon, where Pa will use wind release, Jiraiya will use oil, and Ma will use fire, creating one of the most devastating fire techniques in all of Naruto. On top of this, Ma and Pa are able to use some of the strongest genjutsu in the entirety of Naruto's universe, yes, Tsukiyomi included, and that is Demonic Illusion Toad Confrontation Chant, one of the only sound-based genjutsus in the show. A genjutsu so powerful it was able to place one of the 6 paths of pain in genjutsu. This genjutsu was so powerful that no matter who hears it, regardless of what level of skill they have or genjutsu resistance they have, they will fall under the genjutsu. And this genjutsu can only be undone by having one of the Toad Samurais jam their stone swords into your heart, or by having the casters willingly undo it. There is a reason that Jiraiya in the 3rd data book had one of the highest ratings we've ever seen on a ninja in cumulative points, that being 35.5 points. And you know who else got 35.5 points in the 3rd data book? Itachi. Yes, a live Itachi in the 3rd data book, and by the way, we're going to be talking about a live Itachi today, received 35.5 points in his appraisal as well. Meaning, in the eyes of Kishimoto, these two are equal. But how equal are they is the question. One of the other legendary Sannin openly admits that Itachi is stronger than him. Shisui, known as Shisui of the Body Flicker, hailed as one of the strongest Uchihas of all time, openly admitted that Itachi was stronger than him. Obito even goes so far as to tell Sasuke that in his final battle against Itachi, if Itachi wanted, he could have killed Sasuke. Itachi, while restraining himself, hoping to not actually hurt anybody from Konoha, pushed Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma to their limits by himself. However, when it comes to chakra, that was always Itachi's weakness. See, when it comes to chakra control, there are few out there that are better than Itachi. However, Itachi suffered from a chakra ailment his entire life, which meant not only was his chakra pool significantly smaller than it should be, but overusing his chakra would make his terminal illness even worse. So roughly, how much chakra did Itachi have? This is kind of up in the air. We learned from Itachi Shinden, Book of Dark Night, that he was able to use his MS about 5 times during the Uchiha massacre. However, mind you, at this time he was 13, and his terminal illness wasn't nearly as bad as it would get down the line. See, we learned from Sasuke Jin Raiden that Itachi was actually going to a specific village to take medicine and eye drops that were keeping him alive, as Itachi was essentially on life support for the last couple of years of his life, just hoping to live long enough that Sasuke would get strong enough to kill him. And without the use of these eye drops that Itachi was getting from the Howling Wolf village, he would have died substantially earlier. Now, this is mostly to do with his terminal illness, but also the overuse of his MS definitely sped up the speed at which he died. As we know, by the end of Itachi's life, he was almost blind. In fact, we know as an adult that Itachi was only able to use his MS ability 3 times in one day, and after that, he would be rendered pretty much useless. No longer able to use the Sharingan and with barely enough chakra to sustain any kind of fight whatsoever. Now, fortunately for Itachi, prolonged battles were never really necessary for him, as summoning his Susanoo or using Amaterasu or placing somebody under Tsukiyomi was usually good enough to end a fight like that. However, in situations when Itachi has to undergo a prolonged fight, he gets into some issues. However, his lack of chakra does not equal a lack of physicality, as Itachi was able to go toe-to-toe in hand-to-hand combat with the likes of Naruto using his Jin Cloak and Shisui, 2 of the fastest ninjas in Naruto history. In fact, his hand seals were said to be so quick that even users of the Sharingan weren't able to perceive what he was doing. And he, just like Shisui, could use the body flicker technique. Now, when it comes to ninjutsu, Itachi's bag is a little bit smaller than Jiraiya's, as he wasn't able to use earth or lightning release. However, his mastery over yin release, that being his mastery over genjutsu, definitely makes up for the lack of earth release. Now, Itachi didn't have any big or flashy summons like any of the legendary Sannin or Sakura or Sasuke or Naruto, but what he could summon were crows, and lots of them. And he would often use these crows to distract his enemies or to hide in transformed shadow clones, as he would launch a murder of crows at you and then appear as one of them. He could also make shadow clones out of crows. However, while he is obviously proficient in ninjutsu, he relied on other things, like his shuriken jutsu, which he is believed to be the greatest user of in Uchiha history. With the throwing speed of his shuriken and kunai being so fast, it was considered imperceptible, even by those who wielded a Sharingan, like Sasuke. But Itachi's true strength came from his eyes. See, in one of Itachi's eyes, he wielded Amaterasu, a black flame that burns anything, including fire, until it's ashes, or until Itachi decides to turn it off. Amaterasu is one of the fastest traveling ninjutsu in all of Naruto, though it is absolutely dodgeable. We've seen it multiple times. Now, since Itachi was a pacifist by nature, this is actually what he preferred, though the illusions he created with his genjutsu were anything but pacifistic. See, with the power of Tsukiyomi, Itachi is able to dilate time, to make 1 second 72 hours, or 80 years. When used against Kakashi, we saw Itachi torture him for 72 hours, which broke him mentally. However, when Itachi used his genjutsu against his girlfriend in his light novel, he was able to show her her entire life before killing her, meaning that there's really no upper limit to the amount of time dilation that Itachi can incur by using Tsukiyomi. However, Itachi doesn't even need to use Tsukiyomi. Itachi's able to put people under complicated genjutsu simply by pointing at them, and he's able to use his genjutsu at such a long range that Ao, the Mizukage's assistant, believes that he can control multiple people outside of the range of an entire sensor unit, meaning that Itachi from kilometers away could place people under genjutsu. However, also as a wielder of the MS, Itachi also has access to things like the Izanami and the Izanagi. Izanagi giving him the ability to tap into things like creation of all things and recreate his body through the use of his own imagination and give it physical form through the use of Chakra, allowing him to completely negate what would be his death at least twice. He can also use Izanami, which allows him to place somebody under an infinite loop of genjutsu until they realize the error of their ways. He is also the wielder of the strongest incomplete Susanoo in Naruto's history, as his Susanoo, which is incomplete because he doesn't have EMS, was the wielder of the Totsuka blade in the Yata Mirror. The Yata Mirror able to deflect all ninjutsu and possibly genjutsu attacks, as it was said to be able to reflect all physical and mental attacks, and the Totsuka blade, when either pierced or slashed into somebody's body, seals them away in a sake gourd that contains the realm of drunken dream, a genjutsu reality where you are dizzy for eternity. And with all of these abilities, Itachi was gifted a 35.5 while he was alive in terms of cumulative points in the third data book. So, both of these characters equal stats for all intents and purposes. They meet each other in a battlefield with the only purpose being to kill each other. Who comes out on top? Well, in order to answer this question, we need to speculate how this kind of battle would shake out. What jutsu would either Jiraiya or Itachi use in this battle, and how could the other counter that? But on top of that, we need to take things like their portrayal, reputation, and feats into account here to truly ascertain how strong they would be in this battle. After all, we've had quotes from Itachi saying that if both he and Kisame fought Jiraiya simultaneously, they would either all leave very injured or just stalemate each other. We've had Pain say that if Jiraiya knew his secret, that Jiraiya would have won. We know Pain is stronger than Itachi. We've had Kisame, who is admittedly weaker than Itachi, admit that he wouldn't even be able to touch Jiraiya. Minato, the war hero of the Third Great Shinobi World War, who lived at the same time as Hiruzen, Fugaku, all of the legendary Sannin, Sakumo Hatake, told Jiraiya that he is the one true shinobi that everyone should follow, and that he couldn't imagine a shinobi greater than him, implying that Minato, described as a once-in-a-century genius by Tsunade, might have believed that Jiraiya was actually stronger than him. Jiraiya, the man who accomplished over 1,000 missions, 300 plus of those being S rank. When it comes down to the portrayal of these two characters, Jiraiya takes it pretty handedly. When it comes to feats, Itachi has easily defeated the likes of Orochimaru, a legendary Sannin, and made Orochimaru realize that Itachi was stronger than him. He fought against the strongest non-MS version of Sasuke and could have defeated him if he wanted to. He was able to, in a non-canon episode, permanently cripple Yagura, the Mizukage in perfect Jinchuriki to Isobu. He was able to protect himself from Kirin, one of the strongest lightning techniques in the universe. And when he was reincarnated, he was able to go toe-to-toe toe-to-toe with Kabuto, who had assimilated all of the cells of the Sound Ninja 4 and had become a Dragon Sage. And before that, he was able to use Koto Matsukame on himself to break himself out of Kabuto's control and seal the reincarnated Nagato, though with the help of Naruto and Killer Bee. But Jiraiya destroyed 4 of the 6 paths of pain with no intel, and went toe-to-toe with Naruto in his Four Tails mode when Jiraiya was trying to not hurt him. Feats-wise, I would have to say that Itachi's are slightly more impressive. However, the majority of his most impressive feats did come after his death, and we're talking about alive Itachi here. But let's get down to it, the individual abilities of each and how they would work against each other. Itachi's strongest ability is his Genjutsu, whether that be his pointy Genjutsu or Tsukiyomi. And when it comes to a battle against Jiraiya, this is one of Itachi's most important weapons. However, the only Genjutsu that Itachi could use that would work against Jiraiya would be Tsukiyomi. However, Tsukiyomi can only be cast through eye contact. Well, it appears as though Itachi's pointy Genjutsu doesn't require eye contact. The reason this is kind of a problem for Itachi is because Jiraiya fully understands that the Tsukiyomi MS Genjutsu ability is only castable through eye contact. If Kakashi knew, Jiraiya knows. Now, if hypothetically Itachi was able to cast Jiraiya into Tsukiyomi, Itachi does stand a pretty good chance at winning this fight, because all of the ways that Jiraiya has to counter Genjutsu, the most important of which being Ma and Pa, who are connected to his chakra system, most likely wouldn't be able to react as fast as Tsukiyomi occurs, as Tsukiyomi only really takes a second to happen. However, if hypothetically Jiraiya was able to avoid Itachi's gaze, something I believe he should be able to do, the only real option that Itachi would have would be his pointy Genjutsu, something that Ma and Pa would be able to break Jiraiya out of. Now, the reason that I believe that Jiraiya would be able to avoid Itachi's gaze is his barrier technique and his Senjutsu. See, we learned through Naruto using Froggy Kumite, something that Jiraiya has access to, and by Madara dodging Sasuke's attacks in the war arc while having no eyes by using Hashirama Sage Mode, that Sage Mode grants you an extrasensory perception akin to the Sharingan. Add that into Jiraiya's ability to create a barrier around him that allows him to sense exactly where any incoming projectile or person will be, and there's really no reason for Jiraiya to be looking Itachi in the eyes. Okay, but what about Itachi's other abilities, like Amaterasu? Well, while it is absolutely true that Amaterasu burns anything it touches until it's gone, we've seen multiple times Amaterasu be aim dodged. That is to say that upon realizing that Amaterasu is being fired at them, people simply have to move out of the way. Now, this does require an insane reaction time, but a reaction time that I believe Jiraiya has. Tie that into the fact that he also has his Lion's Mane technique that could block Amaterasu. There's also the fact that Jiraiya has already come into contact with Amaterasu and sealed it off before. And once again, I would like to bring up Jiraiya's sensing barrier that would allow him to feel any Amaterasu heading at him and give him extra time to dodge. Now, genuinely, the biggest problem for Jiraiya would be Itachi's Susanoo, as Jiraiya doesn't really have anything defense-wise comparable to that of a Susanoo. However, what we're technically unsure about is whether or not the Yata Mirror could reflect a Rasengan. See, the Yata Mirror operates by matching the elemental release of whatever element is being fired at it. However, a Rasengan, especially one used by Jiraiya, has no elemental release. It is just Chakra. However, the track record for Rasengans destroying Susanoo's isn't great, as the most comparable moment I can use for the situation is when Naruto used a Big Ball Rasengan against Madara's Susanoo ribcage, the Big Ball Rasengan that Jiraiya has access to, and Naruto using this Big Ball Rasengan doesn't even destroy Madara's ribcage, let alone pushing through a mostly complete Susanoo with the Yata Mirror. However, we do know that Itachi still can technically sustain damage in his Susanoo, as he still sustained a rather substantial amount of damage by using his Susanoo to block Kirin, and Kirin otherwise would have killed him. However, one of the key weaknesses of Itachi's Susanoo is the fact that it's not complete. Now, the reason that Itachi can walk with his Susanoo is the fact that his Susanoo doesn't continue through the ground. Otherwise, Itachi would just be walking in his Susanoo. And this is the case for all incomplete Susanoos. This does, however, mean that Itachi technically is susceptible from attacks from the ground, which Jiraiya, as an incredibly proficient Earth Release user, very much has, the most specific of which being Earth Release Swamp of the Underworld, a technique that allows Jiraiya to create a massive swamp infused with chakra, and the infusing of chakra into this swamp makes the swamp incredibly sticky. Jiraiya is able to make this swamp so large that it's able to completely swallow up entire summoning snakes, which means he's almost definitely able to make a swamp large enough to encapsulate Itachi's Susanoo. Now, mind you, if Itachi were to fall into this swamp, his best option would be deactivating his Susanoo. However, upon the deactivation combination of his Susanoo, Itachi really runs out of options. See, look, I've already stated Itachi is able to use his MS 3 times in one day, meaning he could do something like try Tsukiyomi 3 times, or try Amaterasu 3 times, or manifest his Susanoo 3 times, or any combination of the 3. And for those of you saying that Jiraiya wouldn't be able to get close enough to pull this off, Jiraiya is fully capable of summoning massive toads like Gamabunta, much larger than Itachi's Susanoo. And while Itachi's Susanoo is obviously dangerous with the Totsuka Blade, the Totsuka Blade can be parried, and almost every singular giant toad summoning has a weapon that could block the blade. In fact, the only people we've ever seen the Totsuka Blade work in the first place were kind of just standing still as Orochimaru was slithering his way out of his 8-headed Orochi form, and Nagato didn't see the blade coming. And since technically we know that Kirin was able to injure Itachi while he was in his Susanoo, Jiraiya wouldn't necessarily have to go from under. He could also go from over, as Jiraiya also, like Kirin, has a very powerful attack that falls from the sky. It's known as Food Cart Destroyer, where Jiraiya summons a massive toad that falls onto his enemy. Now, assuming that Food Cart Destroyer would work on Itachi in the first place is kind of a stretch, especially when you consider the fact that Kirin travels at the speed of lightning, and a giant toad would simply travel at the speed of gravity, pulling it towards the earth. And in the amount of time that a lightning bolt was heading at Itachi's head, he was able to summon his Susanoo and save his own life. And when it comes to reflexes and speed, Itachi's got Jiraiya beat pretty handedly. But when it comes to physical strength and stamina, Jiraiya's got Itachi beat pretty handedly. So all in all, who wins? Well, when it comes down to it, I believe that Jiraiya has a certain moveset and amount of physical ability that stops him from being instantly one-shotted by Itachi. That is to say that he knows not to make eye contact with Itachi, and therefore Tsukiyomi is out. He knows how to nullify Amaterasu, and Itachi's Susanoo really doesn't match up all that well against Jiraiya's moveset. And considering the fact that Itachi really only gets 3 goes at any MS ability, I believe in a relatively protracted fight, Jiraiya's got this. Listen, I'm not saying that Jiraiya wins 10 times out of 10, but in 10 battles, I believe Jiraiya wins 6. I believe in 4 out of 10 battles, Itachi's incredible battle IQ allows him to either make eye contact with Jiraiya, or catch him with Amaterasu at the right time, or simply seal him away with a Totsuka Blade. But when it comes down to it, if Itachi comes up against an opponent he can't kill with 1 to 3 moves, he's kind of a sitting duck, at least while we're talking about alive Itachi. Now, the reason I want to talk about alive Itachi and not give him his strongest form, which I believe to be his Edo Tensei form, is because Jiraiya doesn't have one of those. Now, if Jiraiya had been brought back during the Third Great Shinobi Worlds War, I'd very happily pit them both as zombies against each other. But as it currently stands, I don't think that's fair, so I'm gonna take them both while living. But I gotta say, genuinely, when it comes to matchups, this is one of the closest ones in all of Naruto. But what do you guys think? Who do you think wins in this fated 1v1? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, Itachi fans, did any of you sit for 12 hours and have his face blasted onto your thigh? This isn't even the end of the tattoo, so don't even come at me being like,
oh, you have a Jiraiya bias, or oh, you just don't want Itachi to win. He always loses in your 1v1s.
I love him, okay? So get out of my comments.